this. Well,
Live. It's live. Hey,
we are
Brian.
now. Oh, we're live. Good afternoon, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in the old home office with our goldenblack.com Saturday simulcast following Purdue's 52-6 loss at Wisconsin. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your continued support through good times and bad, this being the latter from a Purdue perspective. This is our weekly feature where we seek to come up with topics to discuss and create meaningful, thoughtful, profound conversations, nuance, things like that. So, Tom, I will start with you. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
I'm going to say yes, but I could go for a gyro right now. I want a gyro. Is gyro a sandwich?
Gyro. The Greeks get very upset when you call it a gyro or a gyro. All right. In all seriousness, Purdue loses 52-6 at Wisconsin. Purdue will now hope Wisconsin joins the Pac-12 and they never have to play them again. But Tom, what did you make of this in terms of where Purdue is right now and how close it came to rock bottom today?
Yeah, that was my first line in my thing I posted today. If this isn't rock bottom, it's got to be close to it. Just an abomination. I think in some ways this loss was worse than the 66-7 loss against Notre Dame. So yeah, that was. It's just disappointing, guys. The start looked kind of promising, but they couldn't convert either of those interceptions and touchdowns. They had to set up for field goals. It was 14-6, and off and away goes Wisconsin. Right, the change of coordinator on offense made no difference. Guys, this is a deeply flawed team that's beyond repair, I think, during the football season. The only question now, you think Purdue's going to win another game this year? I think that's a salient question, and I think the answer may be no.
I thought that when Purdue fumbled the punt and Wisconsin scored right after, I thought the game was over because, like, Purdue, so much has to go right for Purdue. Mm-hmm. Just to be in games right now. And it's all three phases of the game, and that's just obviously a searing indictment of what Purdue is right now. Mike, we'll go to you on your yacht. Do you kind of feel the same way that this is a team that's just inherently always trying to climb uphill because it's just got so many issues right now?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be perfect at this stage for them to stay in a game, and it hasn't been perfect, and it won't be perfect. They still have 3 college football playoff teams on their schedule, and as bad as these games have been, I watched Oregon last night, and they didn't score. They scored 31, should have had 45, but they were running all over the place, and especially out on the edge, which has been a weakness for Purdue. But what struck me today, the margin of defeat, number one, but just how fundamentally flawed the defense looked. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen in the last 4 games, take bad angles, miss tackles, and all that. But there seemed to be more in a collection of just bad plays defensively throughout the game that just kind of struck me as, you shouldn't be. It shouldn't be this way at all. Even the first game of the season, we're getting to the midway point. So, what do you do now if you're Ryan Walters? You change the offensive coordinator, and you can't change the defensive coordinator because that is tied to the head coach. So, I don't know what their next options are as far as trying to spark this team and this program to get something out of this season.
Yeah, I want to start with the defense. It just feels like anything they do doesn't work right now. Like, you are a man-to-man defensive-minded system, and you're talking about an emphasis this week being turning around and looking for the football so you don't get called for PI. That's day one stuff when you're coaching man-to-man coverage, if I'm understanding things correctly. In the third quarter, you are a defense that, is known for creative blitzing and putting pressure on quarterbacks. Yet you rush 3, give up a big play because you aren't, geared toward playing zone. You can't stop the run. You're giving up big plays in the passing game. It's just, Tom, where do they kind of go from here defensively? This obviously isn't a good look when you hired a defensive-minded coach.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We talked to Ryan after the game and asked him how much time he spent with the offense this week, given the tumult on that side of the ball with the change in play callers. And he said he spent a decent amount of time with the offense. And he said he turned the defense over this last week,
Yeah,
presumably to Kevin Kane, and 589 yards of offense. They made this number 2 quarterback, Braden Locke, look like Dan Marino, 359 yards passing. So you're right, Brian. You noticed last week, too, they played some zone. They did that again today. Man, Locke found guys wide open, and they ran on a lot of green grass in front of them. There was virtually no rush at all this week either. They looked good against the run early, but that sort of wore down. It looked like there wasn't a lot of fight in the second half. A lot of missed tackles. Mike talked about bad angles, and just not a good look. And I asked Ryan what he thought of the team's effort. In the postgame, he didn't think it was an issue of effort. So, again, you have to think, though, this is weighing on these guys. When you're getting beat down like this, you tend to lose gas, and you lose some want to as well. So where do you go, Brian Neubert? I don't know, my friend. I don't know. Like I said, a deeply flawed team in many respects. Can it be fixed on the run? Doubtful. I know things are never as bad as they seem, guys, but in this case, it may be as bad as they seem.
Yeah, I want to talk about the offense too, but let's start with effort since Tom brought it up. It's 28-6 at halftime. Your 2 field goals, obviously, I think it was a good problem to have. And this is going to sound kind of like a backhanded compliment, but the fact that we're actually talking about red zone offense being a problem actually was a positive development for Purdue, because the defense forced those 2 turnovers.
Yeah.
Purdue got in the red zone, didn't score touchdowns, but at least we're talking about Purdue being in position to score touchdowns. Again, the backhanded compliment of this. But after it's 28-6 at half, Wisconsin scores every time they have the ball in the second half, except for when they just ran out the clock there at the end. What does that say about, all the buzzwords, fight, competitiveness, pride, kind of things like that? Mike, what did you think?
Well, it wasn't there. I can't remember what touchdown it was that they ran in to make it 35-6 or 42-6. Purdue had 3 missed tackles on a 12-yard run, I think. Mm-hmm. And guys were in position to make a play, and they didn't make a play. I'm 4.5 hours away from Madison, so I didn't see it live. But I don't like saying, they waved the white flag, but you do get beat down in these situations, and it's hard to continue to play at a max level when you see the scoreboard and you see what's happening to you. But they have to fix it themselves. There's no waiver wire. There's a transfer portal, but it's not open yet, and we've seen that maybe the transfer portal isn't the best option for Purdue when you look at the collection of guys that they've brought in. But, defensively, they can't. They've got to help their offense out. I know the offense has to help the defense, but today was, as Tom mentioned, kind of another low point. You thought Notre Dame was pretty bad. Oregon State was not like that. Nebraska, you're 0-0 at half. And this one, although you're within striking distance at halftime, you never felt like Purdue could muster anything. And, when they got in the red zone there, I thought Jason Simmons did okay today, but he got too cute on the 3rd down play when he brought in Ryan Brown and tried to do a zone read pitch to Mockleby. I mean, to say that Card does that. So why do you need him to do that when you have your starting quarterback does that? I thought that was a little bit too cute, and I don't think they were trying to fool anybody at that point, or they didn't fool anybody at that point. And you needed a touchdown on both of those possessions, and you didn't get it. But it's these last however many weeks there are left in the season are going to be long ones for this program.
I think this was a game where no one thing, was the story. I think all three phases, were bad. Not just not good enough, but bad. But I did think the offense did some things that indicated a pulse, at least. I think they did better this week than they would have done with what they were doing before. Just couldn't finish in the red zone, obviously. Tom, what did you see from an offensive perspective? I thought it was evident what they're trying to do, at least for the first time since Indiana State, which shouldn't even come into consideration here because of the gulf in competitiveness and the fact Indiana State, I'm not even sure, was trying to win that game. I think they were just trying to take their paycheck and go home. But Tom, what did you see different in terms of what Purdue was trying to do offensively this week from what we saw the last 4 games or 5 games, whatever it's been?
Yeah, you're right, Brian. They did try to do some different things differently on offense, and I asked Ryan exactly what those things were. He talked about having different personnel groupings, having different types of run actions, trying to get the ball out on the perimeter with some movement, moving the pocket, take some shots downfield, things that ilk. And Mike talked about that, running that option there near the goal line. It's funny you guys bring up red zone offense, Brian. I was at halftime drinking a little Coca-Cola, chit-chatting with some fellow Boiler media members, and they mentioned that same thing, Brian, shaking their head in amazement about how poorly they executed in the red zone there when they really needed touchdowns and didn't get them. Ryan brought this up in the postgame, 1 of 11 on third downs. And one of you guys were kidding this week, maybe it was Derek Schultz, about complimentary football. How many times we keep hearing that, right? Absent today, not present. Check this out. The total plays, Wisconsin 73, Purdue 48. Once again, they can't stay on the field, evident of that third down rate, right? Never really got the ground game going. I thought that was going to be a big point of emphasis. But then they fell behind, right? You can't really have the luxury of trying to pound the rock. And also, 2 guys, that listless passing game. Jamal Edrin's back, right? The presumptive number 1 wide receiver. Maybe that's going to provide a bump. And, man, these guys cannot get open. Either Hudson Card can't find open receivers. These guys aren't open. It seems like time and again he's back there looking, running, looking. Nobody's open. Nobody ever catches the ball in stride. There's just nothing there from a passing game standpoint. The longest pass today, guys, was 22 yards. I mean, it just continues a trend across the board for this offense that at this point is really doing nothing effectively.
If I want to thing real quick.
Go ahead, Mike.
There was a play, I can't remember exactly, second quarter or third quarter, that Hudson Card held the ball for 21 seconds as he scrambled, and nobody got open.
Unbelievable. Huh?
Nobody got open. I don't think that's an indictment on Card. That's an indictment on the receivers not able to get away from their defenders. And he finally just had to throw it out of bounds. But he had the ball for 21 seconds and could not – wouldn't even think about throwing a pass till the very end. And, that's, as we all know, that's not a 2024 issue for Purdue in a lot of years. Just receivers being able to create separation against defenses has always been has been an issue with this program for a long time. But that, to me, that was a kind of another bullet point of kind of where this program is at from an offensive standpoint.
That segues into kind of a point I wanted to make is, people always take it out on the quarterback. People always want the quarterback benched. I don't think Hudson Card's been perfect by any means this season, but I don't think Hudson Card is your problem. Hudson Card is part of whatever solution, they're trying to work toward. He's not part of the problem necessarily. He just does not have, for the most part this season, I don't think he's had a scheme that's really helped him. I thought they did a better job today getting him out of the pocket and giving him some easy completions and things like that. These wide receivers are just unbelievably limited. The offensive line, unbelievably limited when people really want to heat them up. And he has been under siege, a lot of the time this season, and there's only so much a quarterback can do. Now, I think the one area where he can get better is I think he can. I don't know if he's a natural read option guy. I think Purdue is trying to implement that to stimulate the running game, and I think he misses some opportunities here and there to keep the ball and get 5, 6, 7 yards, whatever it might be, especially in a shortened field, like those red zone issues. Not that Purdue's been in that situation a whole lot the past month, but I think Hudson Card has not been in position to show what kind of player he is. And I heard somebody on the postgame radio show today call him the worst quarterback in the Big Ten. I think you could probably find a double-digit number of teams in the Big Ten who would be happy to have Hudson Card right now. He's just being wasted. He's just dying on the vine out there with no help. And I think that's been one of the unfortunate parts of this season for Purdue and these first 2 seasons under Ryan Walters is that you had this 2-year window of opportunity with a good quarterback, a legitimately good quarterback, an NFL-level talent, in my opinion, and probably a lot of other people's opinions who just you've kind of wasted that window of opportunity. You've not gotten anything out of it, and I think a lot goes into that. But I don't think this is Hudson Card's fault by any stretch of the imagination. So what now, guys? Whoever wants to take it.
Well, first, we're 17 games into the Ryan Walters experience. 17 games, and here we are. You guys know what the buzz is out there among the fans. They're going nuts, and I don't know. We saw one radical change already with the coordinator. The coordinator change. They're obviously trying to get this thing fixed. Again, we're not sure if it can be fixed. So I don't know, guys. Penalties, again, were something else I wanted to talk about. Sort of another reflection of your discipline, so to speak. At least the pre and post snap penalties. You're going to have, I think, in the course of play, you're going to have things happen, face mask grabbed or whatnot. But pre and post snap things, had a couple of those, and just pass interference. I think that was like the 5th or 6th on Nyland Green already in 2 games.
4th, isn't it?
4th. I'm losing track.
It doesn't matter. Once you get past 4 in 7 quarters, it's all redundant.
That's why I was a C student. Never took algebra 2. But yeah, I mean, on and on it goes with the penalties. It's kind of embarrassing after a while, I think. And I mean, you hate to pile on. And then we talked about the starts too. I could handle this math. Purdue's been outscored in the first quarter 35-7 this year. And the one touchdown came against Indiana State. So they haven't scored a first quarter touchdown against an FBS opponent yet this year. And again, that doesn't allow you to do your run game that we all think is the strength of this offense. So on and on it goes, man. Ryan Walters knows it. He gets it. I think he can read the room. He wasn't sullen today. I think you kind of go through different phases of grief, right? I think the shock is gone now, right? The shock and all, and it's gone now. Now you're just looking at yourself going, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. I mean, I felt like that in my life, sometimes taking classes. I don't know if I can do this. And I don't know where it's going to go, but it certainly hasn't been pretty, and there's a lot of work to do, and it's not going to be a lot of fun watching that film tomorrow. I'm glad I'm not going to be in that room.
Just to follow up on the pass interference real quick, I do want to mention this, that I thought the one that happened deep in Purdue territory was both bad and late, and then that ends up leading to a big play for Wisconsin. Now, that said, when you are bad, that's the sort of stuff that happens to you, too. Purdue had every opportunity to shake off that bad call, get a stop on defense, didn't do it. So I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that, that affected the outcome of this game in any way, shape, or form. It was 52-6. No one thing mattered. But I just wanted to mention that little thing that, sometimes you make your own luck. And when you are just a bad team, you don't earn your breaks. And it just has a funny way of working that way. That's kind of football. That's kind of life. But, it is interesting if this doesn't get markedly better, almost improbably better here the rest of the way, it's going to get interesting. Everything I believe in when it comes to like big picture views and the clear headedness and the level headedness, the sober way we have to look at these things tells me that, there's a process at play here, but this is bad. Like, this isn't getting better. There have been no positives to this season thus far, and if we're still talking this way in 6 weeks, Purdue, what's Purdue going to do here? Like, it's I'm probably talking a little bit too loose right now, but Purdue's going to have to look pretty hard at this, aren't they, Mike?
I mean, I think you have to. You hate to. I mean, a lot of things that I see come back to coaching and other things, like the flaws on defense, the bad angles, the lack of fundamentals on defense, the PIs. When you have to turn your head around, all that kind of stuff, and just a lot of things point back to what's happening or not happening in practice, what's happened in the off season as far as teaching and all that. This, as I mentioned, this seems like a very flawed team fundamentally that can't get out of its own way. And whether it's penalties, which is a reflection of, I think penalties are a bit of a reflection of coaching, or lack thereof, if you want to say it that way. But there's a lot of things that come back to, when, I've thought this the last couple weeks, and we're probably getting way ahead of ourselves on this, but the value of having, in this situation, in this conference at this time, the value of having an experienced head coach run your program, I think is coming to the surface at Purdue. And I think, to me, when this is all over, not just this season, when it's all over, I think, to me, that's the reflection point, that you knew what you were getting into in the league. You knew what you needed, and this is the direction that you chose to go. Now, the question now becomes, and again, a little bit ahead of ourselves, and I'm not fueling the fire or the hot takes, but if this ends up at 1-11 or 2-10, and it doesn't look any different as we get to the end of the year, can you admit that, okay, we need to start over, or will the ego or everything else just kind of force you to hang on and play this thing through? Because as tough as this year is, next year is harder from a schedule standpoint. You got Notre Dame, you got USC, you got Washington, you got Ohio State and Michigan. And that's not even counting Illinois and Indiana that you play on a regular basis. So, but the other question to me is, like, by making change on the coordinator side, do you buy yourself another year to see how it can be fixed from that standpoint? But how much money are you willing to spend? You got revenue sharing next year. Mm-hmm. Some of that money needs to go to the players. I mean, Harrell was set to make $1 million next year. Do you still go after a coordinator for $1 million, or do you need to cut that back a little bit and shovel some of that money toward the players? But I think things are coming to a crossroads, if they're not already there, in my opinion, with what decisions have to be made. And we still have a long way to go. And I'm not pushing any button here, but these conversations have to start taking place at a higher level within the athletic department, in my opinion.
It is a complicated topic to a certain extent, because taking this year and projecting that on the next year, we sit here, it's going to be a different team every year. I mean, that's the reality of it. There's going to be 20 guys who leave this team and 20 more who come in next year. But that also shines the spotlight on some of the stuff we're talking about here in terms of the preparation, whatever's going on behind the scenes in practice, the overall organization, because you have to be able to hit the ground running with these teams. And if the infrastructure is not strong, then that's going to be problematic no matter who's on your team. So I don't think there's an easy answer here. I think starting over is always. I sit here and look at these comments: fire, 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 and that's kind of the nature of fandom, and that's kind of the nature of our culture. But at the same time, you have to be prudent about this stuff. Making changes willy-nilly all the time, and I'm not saying that the results don't matter here, but there is a process, there is a big picture involved here, and you have to lay foundations, right? And you can't keep relaying foundations. And obviously a lot of the topics we're talking about here are related to the foundation that's being laid or not being laid here. But I think just there are some things Purdue's going to have to look at long term here, but at the same time, you have to have some measure of patience with this stuff. On top of all the implications that would come with making wholesale changes again and all the money involved, which they're not necessarily growing on trees right now in terms of big wads of $1,000 bills. Are there $1,000 bills?
I think so. Yeah.
Are there?
Mike's on his wallet, I know.
Mike would know.
I took them to the track the other day, but they wouldn't accept it.
It had Neubert's picture because it had Neubert's picture on it.
That's right. The one thing I'll say about that, is everyone, as the higher ups have to make decisions here. We're in a different era where, 10 years ago, if you wanted to dump a coach after 2 or 3 years, you could. You go to a donor, he helps you with that, and you kind of move on. But now you're going to these same donors wanting money for revenue sharing and NIL. Yeah. At what point? Decisions have to be made. At what point? Who's more important, your players or your coach?
Yeah.
Well, you still got, you still got to sell tickets for next year too.
You do.
Mike, you covered the Darrell Hazel era, and I can't imagine there's going to be a hot market for Purdue football tickets in 2025 with this staff fully back. I don't know.
Well, I didn't think there'd be a hot market this year, but they've sold out. Now, a lot of that was Notre Dame related, Nebraska related. I get that. And then the Northwestern games to sell out. So they've done a good job of selling their tickets, but I think at some point that comes to a head where, but it's also it's so important now. It always has been that your football program generate revenue for you.
It's got to,
because it's magnified even now that your football program has to be at a competitive level to generate revenue and interest and all that.
What kind of a coordinator could you get to walk through that door? You're going to get an old guy who's desperate for a job, or some young, unproven guy. You're probably going to have to overpay for him. You probably have to give him a multi-year contract. Think of the guys that Hazel would bring in, the new coordinators, or Danny Hope. They were just guys desperate for jobs, man. You're not going to get some whiz-bang guy to come in and hitch his wagon to what's going on here right now, are you?
Well, first of all, Darrell wasn't allowed to bring his own staff with him, his own coordinator. So that was problematic for him, where he had to end up getting a John Shoup and a defensive coordinator that was fired at Florida State. And
Tibesar.
It just never worked. It just has never worked. But these are a lot of questions that what will be the market for someone to come to Purdue? And again, how much are you going to pay?
What's this going to do to recruiting, high school and portal recruiting? What's this going to do to people who want to give for NIL? Do they want Ryan Walters spending more NIL money? Because I'll be honest, I only count about 4 guys that got here this year that are really impacting. Reggie Love, maybe Kendrick Breedlove, and 2 special teams guys, your long snapper and punter. How many other portal guys that got here this year are really impacting? Out of about 20 guys. Corey Stewart hadn't been great. The DJ Wingfield's starting too, but they've been a mixed bag. Guys are hurt already. I don't know, man. They're not getting much bang for their buck, I don't think.
And that's the point I wanted to make earlier, is that, people just hoping for changes immediately have to understand, you make a change nowadays, your players leave, you got to scramble to put together a roster. Mm-hmm. You got to coach up that roster into a winning team. And then all those guys are going to leave because they're all 1 or 2 year guys. it's kind of that vicious cycle a lot of basketball programs get into. Matt Painter actually just talked about this basketball media day, is that when you get a new job, you have to be in the portal. And all of a sudden that cycle makes you a portal guy, even if you don't want to be a portal guy. And I think in football, that's going to be even worse. Jeff Brom leaves, all his good players left. They kind of checked out in recruiting to a certain extent. Had they gotten good players, they would have probably left too. Ryan Walters takes over a pretty barren roster. To be honest with you, gets his quarterback, which was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're piecing together everything else with the crumbs you were left from a coaching staff that didn't recruit very well their last couple of years. The best players who stayed left after a year. Garrett Miller, Nick Scarton, and Deion Burks.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're just stuck in this vicious portal cycle where maybe you just kind of have to accept the fact that there's only so much you can do in this situation. Purdue's not going to be alone in this situation. An overwhelming majority probably of college football is going to be in the same deal, where they're just trading the middles of their rosters every year. And like, you're just moving the vegetables around on the plate, but you're not really eating anything.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps that's just the new reality for Purdue and those like it, is that you're just going to have these rosters where you're just hoping to do something, anything. And as I kind of wrote before the season, it's probably time to redefine success for places in the middle of the college football food chain. Is that, perhaps 6 wins is the new 9 wins or 8 wins. But Purdue right now doesn't look like a 6-win team by any stretch of the imagination. And, it's perfectly reasonable to expect better from Purdue where it is right now than what you've seen here through 5 games. But I feel like we're just complaining now, and we're just kind of, someone should do something about all the problems,
Come on, Mike.
But, anybody got anything else?
I don't.
I'm looking at these comments here, seeing if there's something we can smartly address, but all I see is the word fire. Somebody complaining about our YouTube audio, which we have gone to unbelievable lengths
Hello.
Prove over the years.
Casey, America's top 40.
I think press conference audio is the issue.
I've got a table for 2 of Culver's. I got to be there in a half hour, so we got to wrap this up.
What else we got? Call Pat Fitzgerald.
Like that.
Someone told me Pat Fitzgerald might be next at Iowa.
Bring Kirk Ferentz. He's got some tire left on his tread. Give him to West Lafayette.
So,
I just reiterate I don't think we're at a crossroads moment yet, but with each one of them, if Purdue was like ultra competitive in these games, you could live with it, but you can't keep going down this road that they're going on. I mean, Wisconsin's not a great football team.
This may be the worst team they played. Wisconsin team they played in the streak.
I mean, they're just not. Now they're better. They're better than Purdue, but in the big picture, I mean, as I said, you still got 3 college football playoff teams on your schedule that you hope that you can somehow be competitive with. And now you're just looking at trying to be competitive with Illinois, which, once again, it's another opponent coming off a loss that Purdue has to play, even though they had off week this week. It's another team they have to play coming off a loss.
Are you counting Indiana as a college football playoff team?
No.
I'm kidding. Everybody else is.
Well, that's everybody else. I usually I go against the grain. So.
Yeah, I don't think Wisconsin's a great team. I don't think Oregon State's a great team, but
no. And that's the problem there with if you're Purdue, is that you're getting rolled by teams that are not great.
You're getting rolled by your peers.
52-6 by Ohio State. But
I don't think Nebraska's that good.
No.
They were begging to get beat too. They were begging to get beat.
Right, they're better.
That reminds me of, I don't know if you guys remember the scene in Christmas Vacation where Cousin Eddie he walks up to the little Christmas house made of popsicle sticks and just knocks it over, and then just shrugs and walks away. For some reason, I think of that every time Purdue makes a mistake early, because it doesn't have the capacity to do everything right thereafter to recover from that early mistake. At Oregon State, it was that weird pick six and the fumble in the red zone. Today, it was the fumbled punt. And it just seems like if Purdue could just have something really positive happen early in a game, maybe we would see better what they're capable of. But they just don't have the whatever the word would be to recover from an early debacle. And
chutzpah.
I thought that meant like bravado, or like swagger.
They don't have the gumption. They don't
resolve.
Have the resolve.
Metal. M-E-T-T-L-E. Metal.
Yes, the metal. You're a metalhead.
So I don't know what the solution to that is. I mean, obviously you go into games saying, hey guys, let's not throw a pick six in the first 5 minutes of the game, or let's not fumble at the 20-yard line, or let's not fumble a punt inside our own territory. Things like no one's trying to do this. It just it happens to Purdue, and they're not good enough to overcome their own mistakes. And what would be really refreshing and revealing to me is if Purdue plays Northwestern and just gets a lead, or has something very positive happen in the early going of the game, or even at Illinois here coming up. If they just get off to a good start, maybe we would see something more in this team than we've been able to see when they're constantly playing behind and, things like that. But who knows? Well,
they need help from the other team. It's clear they need help from the other team. They got that today with the 2 interceptions, but they couldn't convert those into touchdowns.
That was huge. Yeah. That was huge.
That's complementary football. That's what complementary football means. Is the defense gets a turnover deep in your territory, you score a touchdown. Not that Purdue wasn't trying to score a touchdown. They weren't playing for field goals. They just had to settle for them.
Yeah.
But there is a certain deflating sort of part of that too, where your defense made plays to the point where you could have been 14-14 there at some point in that game. Just like at Oregon State, you could have been up 7-0. And, hell, you could have been up 10-0, if I recall correctly, if you don't throw that weird kick six. But
so
I don't
Mike,
know, guys.
Mike, again, we'll sign Mike. How long has Purdue led against FBS teams this year?
Well, probably 3 minutes.
That field goal 3-0 lead against Nebraska.
Well, when they went up 3-0 against Nebraska in the second half.
Yeah. Oh yeah, second half. That's right. 3-0. There you go.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. All right. We all got a text from Alan that said, "Feel free to wrap it up." So.
All right. I got some. Yeah.
You sure we don't want to stay here the rest of the night? I got nothing else to do.
Well, I do.
Mike, where are you?
I'm at home.
He's got Old Glory swaying in the wind behind him.
You on the lake or something?
No, I'm at my house.
Is that a lake behind you? I just see a
big
that's
trees.
Oh.
He's got a roaring fire in his den inside.
Yeah,
all right. Well,
it's our new patio space we just had done this summer.
Okay, so, I'll be over tomorrow.
You live in the high life. So, all right, kids. I think we've talked enough. So
farewell. I'll see you guys in Champaign County next week.
Safe travel.
Everybody for watching. We appreciate it. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel, as always, for your support. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment if it's a productive comment. If it involves the word fire, your point is redundant. Just understand that, okay? If you're listening to this on iTunes, if you could leave a 5-star review, we would very much appreciate it. If you don't feel like you want to leave that sort of review, you can keep it to yourself. So that's what we got. Visit goldenblack.com. Everybody, we will have total coverage, thorough coverage from this exhilarating Purdue football game to come. I will have a bunch of stuff on Purdue basketball this week. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, you will want to be on goldenblack.com all week. We are not just a YouTube page. People, I want to make that very clear to those of you who might not know that. So, all right, guys, I have rambled enough. Tom, you have rambled enough. Mike, you have solved all the world's problems, and we can cut out of here now. So thanks, everybody.
I'll probably have nothing for the site throughout the week, just so you know.
He's going to be trolling the message boards.
God damn it.
Searching for his name.
He's going to be